panel today that represents ways of thinking about and adding to curriculum. So I want to throw it to them, to have them introduce themselves to you. And when you're introducing yourself, could you talk about how you see yourself as a PIC educator? Like, where do you fit into that space? So, there we go. Cody, take it.
Cody Hayes. I work in nonprofit marketing. I'm most known for helping nonprofits maximize their marketing while streamlining their time. I typically work with nonprofit professionals like fundraisers, development directors, and executive directors, even founders. The common thing that they're all going through is like, there's just too much stuff to do. And as a executive director, as a development director, the comms kind of falls to the last thing on the plate. And so typically when I go in to work with organizations, we work together for a 1-week sprint to develop the tools and the messaging, the emails, the social, kind of that starting point for them to then go and execute on that campaign. And so that brings me to PIC, and I'm very new to understanding and like knowing about PIC, and the first time I heard about it was through Angela, and attended this conference for the first time with everyone else last year. And so I think as I am approaching PIC through a practitioner lens, I see it as an opportunity for us as nonprofit employees, as consultants, to rely on research. But then also, as I am approaching and starting my PhD program at Arizona State in August, thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm also looking at it through, what have I not learned yet? I went through the UF program, the digital strategy program, a little different than PIC. Don't think PIC existed when I was going through the program, or it was just starting. And so I'm looking at this as a practitioner who is eager to learn from researchers, from people who are well beyond my even imagination of what I hope to understand in the next few years. But I'm just say that to say, I hope we can take this time and this space to keep an open mind and figure out how we can bridge the divide between the two.
Wonderful. I guess I'm going next. Hello, everyone. I'm Natalie Tyndall. I'm at the University of Texas at Austin. I am the director of the Stan Richards School of Advertising and Public Relations, where I also am a professor teaching public relations. So for me, being here, if I can just say this, is refreshing. It's like a cool glass of water on a hot day. Like, it is amazing to be in a room with people who are striving to do the same things that I want to do, and to have a home. I have been without an academic home for many years. Public relations is what I do, that's my research, but I've always wanted to do this type of work. So it's amazing to find this group of people. So thank you to all. Thank you for all of you being here. In terms of my classroom, I can say there has been this metamorphosis over time. I came in, 15 pages of notes, very strict. We're gonna get through all this stuff and make very straight PR type of work. But now I have come into the realization that students that I see are coming in and wanting to learn more about advocacy. How can they be better advocates for the causes, the concerns that they have, and what can we do in our classroom space? Not only that, for me, I think if we're doing this PIC work, we have to walk the walk and talk the talk. So that also means that we need to think about, how do we make our classrooms equitable? How do we have culturally relevant pedagogy? How do we have universal design principles built in? How are we reaching all of our students in unique and different ways? Because if we're doing that for the people that we are communicating with on the outside, how are we doing that with the people who are inside our classrooms who need different styles and different things as well?
Hi, I'm Ann C. Wright Cristiano. I'm the director of the Center for Public Interest Communications at the University of Florida. And our center is a institution within the university, within the College of Journalism, that is independently funded and works with partners around the world to apply public interest communications frameworks to real-world problems. So we're doing that. We're doing a lot of training. We're training senior military leaders. We're training public health practitioners. We're training foundations in these frameworks. And then also bringing all of that experience back into the classroom. So when we're offering an idea to our students for them to start to think about how they might apply it to something that they care about, we can offer that in the context of, this is how we've applied this work in all of these other contexts. Here's the grounding in the research and the literature. And I think I see that role as kind of being working in the field, working with students, building relationships with scholars who I deeply admire, and doing all of those things simultaneously is being really important to kind of the essence of public interest communications and how we do our best work.
All right, Carrie, online.
Hey everybody, I'm Carrie Freeman. Sorry I can't be with you there in person, but I've been doing, my dog is here too, which makes it even better. Actually, it's better now because he can be here. But yeah, I've been doing a lot of traveling to different conferences and stuff, and so I kind of needed to be at home for a while. But I am a professor of communication at Georgia State University in Atlanta, and I come more from the media studies tradition. In fact, I did my undergrad back in the day at University of Florida, and I actually didn't, Angela was the one that contacted me, similar to what you said, Cody. Like, I didn't know about public interest communication as a topic or a term, and probably because in a lot of our ICA and NCA, it's just not something that we see as like a common division. You know, so I situate my work within environmental communication usually, or sometimes media ethics or something like that. So, but I was really excited about this new terminology because I actually do think it fits what I'm doing, but I just didn't know that. So I tend to teach media ethics, so to future journalists and PR people. And so in that class, I definitely say we're not just interested in interesting the public with entertainment type media, but we want to serve the public interest. So the topic of public interest comes up, but I never really thought of it as a term for this type of communication. And the other class I tend to teach a lot is communicating environmental issues. And both of those classes were classes that I developed. And then I sometimes teach communication campaigns at the undergrad or grad level. And then I try to do that in a nonprofit or advocacy realm when I teach those classes. Anyway, so that's how I come to all this. I'm also an activist on my own and have an environmental radio show, In Tune to Nature. And so that was also why I chose communication in terms of being a professor and a researcher, was I was already an activist and I wanted to study how best to communicate issues, particularly animal rights and environmental issues, but also social justice issues to the public, but also kind of culturally through media. So I think because I came at this as an activist, that's what I tend to like to study. And then I bring that orientation into the class, like, of course everybody wants to change the world. Of course you do. You know?
Of course we do.
Yeah.
Right? We do in this room, for sure. So as you can see, we have a lot of really different backgrounds here, right? So Anne was who started the PIC curriculum at UF, right? She's now in more of the center role. Natalie's teaching it. But so nobody here is like, I teach PIC all the time. But we all identify as having that mindset. So what is it that makes a PIC mindset or a PIC curriculum unique, right? What are the skills or the tools of, regardless of what the class you're teaching, like what is that makes it PIC?
Oh, is that for us?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I thought that was for the audience.
No, later. Yeah.
I think one thing with a PIC mindset, we've heard a lot of these adjectives being said around the room for the past few days. I think there's a liberatory function for communication, and I think that is what the goal should be in that classroom. If you are engaging in public interest communication work, how do we help liberate, how do we help in that way, this specific community for this specific issue? I think that is something that's important. Also, too, I think there has to be I think service learning in the academy has often become this thing that we easily do. Like, we're gonna go do this garden for this group of people and you're gonna write a paper about it. I think you can reframe service learning in this way of saying we're actually gonna create something meaningful, valuable, and actually worthy of this community based on our engagement with this community within this bounded time span we have. And what's the benefit that the community gets, and then what's the benefit that our students see from it? Because I think that is also another thing that has to be embedded within this type of curriculum, is that service learning mindset, but also to having the students reflect upon what's changed in their own personal opinions and how has that changed their vision of the field as a communicator, as a public relations person, as an advertising student, whatever that might be.
I think from a practitioner side of things, as I look kind of and reflect back on my own journey, employability is what comes to top of mind. So especially if you don't have an entire dedicated PIC program or track, your students, because I know it was my experience, we don't have the portfolio to be ready to work inside of a nonprofit. Or be ready to start a agency or a consultancy. And so one of the things that I've incorporated into my classes is just this, it seems simple, but a portfolio. And encouraging students to, and literally incorporating into the assignments, week 1, hey, we have a semester-long project going on and it's your portfolio, and the only thing that I want you to do on that is fix your assignments after they're done. Incorporate the feedback from your peers, incorporate the feedback from me, and then last week, right before your final or after your final, whatever, turn it in. That's what I want. I want to see and measure your growth, just like that employer is going to want to see, oh, is this person has a great resume, but they're catered, like they learned how to market for Disney. It's way different than trying to influence public change or how you would go about promoting and working on a cause or an issue. And so if we are wanting to be setting up our students for success, we have to recognize that career services doesn't always know how to fill in that gap. Our own advising team in our college may not know how to help recruit or help this student position themselves as valuable in the market, because we're in this society, as we all know, we're also focused on sales, sales, sales. That's not what we're trying to do here with PIC.
Can I hop in really quickly?
Yes.
I think one important thing, too, to go along with that is not only having the portfolio assignment, but also to asking students to interrogate their values. What is important to them? How do they want to go? Where do they want to go? Where do they see themselves? Because that's also going to help them. For many students who come into some of these spaces where we teach, they have been told activism is a dirty word. It is something that you have to be a tree hugging, blah, 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 and you can't do this as a career. This isn't a profession. This isn't real. You have to break all those things down. So getting them to understand that this is just as valuable as going to go market for Disney or going to sell toothpaste for Colgate or whatever. It's a valuable career path. There are opportunities for that, but making them understand that means they have to first interrogate what exactly do they want to do. And how do they want to do this? And some of our students are already doing these things, but they may not know how to package it in such a way. They're already activists doing preservation work, or they're doing digital archiving work. They just don't know or think of this as activism or as a communication thing that they're doing.
Or
So
a thing they should put in their portfolio.
Exactly.
Which is like maybe step 1.
Exactly. So these are the things that I want to brag on my student. My student Vivian's out in the audience. She's graduating soon. She's going to need a job. She's amazing. She has a wonderful portfolio, and it's because she took the time to figure out these are the things that I'm working across all of my experience at the University of Texas, and I'm putting this into my portfolio to show the brilliance of the work I have and the depth of the work I have. because our students are doing amazing things, they just don't know how to categorize it or what to say about it. So I think that's important as well.
You got the why, I got the what.
We work together.
Yeah, we do.
Peanut butter and jelly, man.
So if I could just offer a compliment to that, which is when I came to University of Florida in 2010 as a chair in public interest communications. When they hired Angela, they actually found someone good. But when I came in and people were coming to my office and saying, oh, you're the one who does nonprofit PR, you're the one who does CSR, I was like, no, it's not that. I'm not sure what it is. And so I've been on a sort of more abstract journey to say, well, what is this? And how is it unique from the other things that our students are learning? And how do we differentiate it from that in a way that is useful to all of our disciplines? So I started to think about, like, what are those essential elements of this field? What does public interest communications have to have that makes it public interest communications and not one of the sister disciplines that is so important to public interest communications and informs public interest communications? So I think of this as 4 things. We have to have these 4 elements. So the first one is facts. We have to start with observable fact. We have to start with documented history. We have to start with replicable scientific insight that's free of bias, inclusive of diverse lived experience. Everything we do must begin there. But then the thing that we do that differentiates us perhaps from journalism or the information deficit model is that we have to share that in a way that resonates with the people who can actually use those facts to make a lasting difference. So we have to communicate it in a way that is meaningful to them, that aligns with what they see as being true and valuable and useful, and really think about how some of the science around worldviews and moral values enters into actually having that all resonate. And then we also have to have solutions, and those solutions have to be evidence-based, meaning they should be rooted in systems thinking. Matt Sheehan has developed an amazing framework called Build the World You Wish Existed, which uses systems thinking and human-centered design to identify the solvable part of a problem. But we need to be working towards solutions. We can't simply say we need to raise awareness of this condition. There is value in raising awareness of a condition, but it's not public interest communications unless we're working toward a solution. And then finally, we need to be focused on the greater good, making sure that the rights that are available to some are available to all, that solutions benefit all who might endure a condition, that those who cause harm are held accountable for being part of the solutions to that harm. And if we don't have a strategy that is serving all 4 of those things, then I think it's not public interest communications. And I really want to bring that to my students in the classroom so that they're thinking about all of these things simultaneously and really sort of, I think a lot of times students come to public interest communications with this sort of generalized desire to do good. And that is important and that is valuable. But public interest communications is a skill set. And I think one of the things that we can do is help our students become virtuosos of change and really understand how to do these things exceptionally well.
I love it. I love it.
I brought slides.
All of the slides, right? Carrie.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I love what everyone said, and then I really like that little diagram, too. And what the word that resonates with me the most is advocacy, and because that, I think, the classes that I teach, that's probably where things converge a bit, is this notion that things need to change, that we need to interrogate systems, especially if there's inequity, and then how is communication part of that process? So, I think, like, yeah, if you're given a chance to teach and you're assigned a PR class or a campaigns class, you can then say, like I do, I say, well, this is an advocacy or activist or nonprofit-oriented campaigns class. Like, we're not doing corporate campaigns in this class. It's easy for me to say that, too, because I don't have a background in corporate campaigns. But so sometimes the class title that you have on the books at your school is kind of vague, but you can take it and then use whatever textbook you want, because now there's public interest communication textbooks that are coming out, thanks to Anne and Angela. So you can make it that way. I think that you're saying we're focusing on causes and social causes. Another thing I would say is, in terms of the public and public interest, I wouldn't limit that. Of course, we think of the public usually as a variety of human groups, but I wouldn't limit that just to the human or just to the publics who take in our communication messages, because we also want to know that we need to think of the stakeholders who are other animal species as well as ecosystems. And so not because they're consuming our communication, but because the values that we put forth in communication affect all other species, because we're like decimating the planet right now. And so that has to be a part of it. And I bring that into my ethics class too. Like when we're talking about the stakeholders that we have to think about for every decision we're making, it's not just the human groups, it's the more than human world who are affected by what we're doing. And then just also the ethical component needs to be there. Maybe it's obvious that we're all ethical, but just that we're not talking about any means to the greater good. We want to have some integrity in the whole communication and media world. And we want to, and I build my ethics class around the concept of truth, justice, and minimization of harm. And so, and that transparency component, I think, is really important. Because even if you were bringing in some kind of corporate aspect to one of your classes, you can still focus on corporate transparency, or B corporations, or corporations trying to make, healthy products or something like that. And then the fairness component also has the notion of diversity, like who's speaking, who are we speaking to? Are we allowing a lot of diverse voices to produce our persuasive communication? And then the last one I usually have is minimization of harm, because that's a minimum. But in the public interest communication field, I think you have to switch that around to just not avoiding harm, but being pro-social or pro-ecological. So you could take the minimization of harm and turn it into being pro-social. But anyway, those were some of the things I was thinking of mentioning.
Right. So that goes sort of perfectly into what I wanted to talk about next. So most of these classes, at University of Florida, you're lucky enough, like you have students signing up for a class that is labeled PIC, right? They're coming and they're taking it. But a lot of places don't, right? And so when Carrie's saying, hey, well, you take a campaigns class and you just turn it into PIC campaigns, like, how can we do that better? Or what's the best way to maybe think about how do we weave these aspects of PIC, of questioning values, of creating portfolio materials that are going to help them? What's the best way to sort of weave those aspects into a class if you don't get to teach public interest communication explicitly?
I can take it. Do you want to take it, Carl? Okay, I'll take it. So I think one thing that you can easily do is working with social groups, social justice organizations, advocacy groups, bringing that into the classroom and having a very structured approach. I think one of the hard things for a lot of us when we start teaching, we bring in clients, but sometimes we don't scaffold the learning experience to meet the client's expectations or to meet the student's expectations. So having a group come in and say, we're working on this particular issue that this group deals with. How can we create an advocacy campaign around that? That could be something that you do in a classroom. The biggest thing you do we have to think about when working with clients is dealing with expectations, and also helping the clients understand that this is student work. They are in the process of learning and engaging. That may mean that the stuff is not good, but it is a process for them to learn and to experience. Think for the students, it is getting them to see beyond themselves. So sometimes pushing them to do things that are off campus or groups that they would not normally interact with, that's incredibly important too, to get them out of, I'm this age bracket, so I'm going to market to this age bracket. Getting them to see that there are bigger things happening within the city they live in, within the neighborhoods that they are walk through every single day, that's incredibly important as well. So I think the easiest thing we can start with is thinking about the clients that we choose if we're teaching a public relations class. If it's a journalism class, what are the beats that the students are covering? Oftentimes, beats are at the university. What about the neighborhood surrounding the university, where it is the West Side neighborhood or the East Side campus, and getting to know those people there? Those are things to think about as well. So I think that would be the easiest thing we could start doing at an assignment level.
The examples that you choose. You can pull your examples from social change, because those are also, you can talk about the successes of the civil rights movement in the context of a public relations course all day long, as some of the most brilliant public relations work that's ever been done. The guest speakers that you bring in and the values that they represent and the perspectives that they offer, the voices that you're centering when you're quoting experts. What kinds of experts? Who are they? What kinds of lived experience do they represent? The readings that you choose, and
Absolutely.
which kinds of authors you're bringing in and asking your students to read and understand. But I also think you can build a community in your classroom that looks like what we want public interest communications practice to look like in terms of our expectations of one another and how we interact with each other as well.
I think setting the tone for the classroom space is so incredibly important, and it can happen in different ways. Like, I like to do a class charter or team charter, so people have to think about what are their rules. My number one rule for every group is don't be a jerk, and I don't use the word jerk. I think that's incredibly important.
I think I know what word you're using.
You know, Carrie knows what word I use. So I think that setting those boundaries within the classroom of what's acceptable, what are the things that we can do, what are the things we're going to engage in, those are incredibly important. Also, too, to follow up on Ann's point, diversifying the curriculum and the readings and bringing in scholars who are doing this type of work, but also scholars who are diverse, who are from the global South, who are from the communities that you're talking about. Those are all things that you can do, and you can even bring some of those scholars in via Zoom. The magic of Zoom works well in these types of classroom spaces. Or there's tons of videos that the Center for Public Interest has, that Institute for Public Relations has, that PRSA have, that NABJ and SPJ have. You can easily bring those, incorporate those into your classroom so students get those diverse speakers and diverse experience and that diverse research in there too.
I'm telling you, Zoom guest speakers is the biggest upside of COVID. Like, that we learned that this was a thing that we could do and like do it way more often. Again, that's my silver lining of COVID. That's my goal in life. I find the silver lining for everything. So.
I think back to, a few years ago, I inherited a class. Love it. But part of that, it was right when we started doing Quality Matters at UF, and so I had the lovely privilege of redesigning that class. And so one of the things that I did was just look at all of, like, what blogs do we have on there that the last person pulled? It was all white. Like, that is simple enough. Like, if you go through every single week of curriculum and say, who wrote this? Who is this coming from? And make a change. It's as simple as that.
What are challenges that you've faced as you're trying to weave PIC into your classrooms, and how have you been able to overcome them? Because we know it's not all sunshine and roses, let's be honest.
Well, the first thing you've got to do is find yourself a really great department chair.
Right, I've heard those are helpful.
Yeah, that's I would start there. But I do think it's important to, one, acknowledge everything that you have done as the chair of the Public Relations Department to prioritize and to establish the public interest communications track. And you've shown a lot of leadership for that, and I think that that's really important, not just in creating space for public interest communications, but showing an expectation that this is a legitimate discipline that is part of the discourse of what communications is. And I think you have overcome a huge barrier for that, and I want to give you huge props for that, so thank you. But I think also there is, I think one of the other barriers is just sort of student expectations. And really kind of navigating what they thought they were going to get in the class, and like really trying to understand what they came for. And a lot of times, you know, when I have the chance to really listen to that, there is something that there's a wrong that they have seen, a wrong that they have experienced, and they bring that and they want to figure out how to fix that. And I think that like really getting at that and creating space for that and understanding that, it's not so much a barrier, but it is absolutely an imperative.
I think institutional rules can be a barrier. We've talked a lot about bringing in guest lecturers or bringing in some diverse voices, but if the university isn't going to compensate those people for their labor, I don't feel comfortable making that ask. And so what can we do on a college lens or university lens or department lens to change that?
Carrie, I can feel it.
Oh
coming
yeah,
from you.
I was just listening to what Cody said. Now I forgot what I was going to say related to this. But I think the student expectation part is important too, just a little bit if you're worried about your student evals. Just if you have some group of students that think that also that you should be this total objective social scientist up there or something, and so you're more of an advocate for all the things that need to change in society, I guess they have to be used to that. At my school at Georgia State, which is a downtown Atlanta school, that tends to be acceptable to people. Or like, it is a little more progressive of maybe a concept that the world should change, things are inequitable, and communication plays a role in this. So I think, yes, setting those expectations about the values of the class early on, or one way I say it is like, this is what I researched. The university values us bringing our research into the classroom. So maybe I get away with that a little bit too, because I'm like, I research about animal rights and the environment and activism. And so I'm going to bring this into this class. So if you take a class with me, it's going to have these elements in it. But yeah, occasionally you might get a student who thinks you're kind of biased or whatever. But I think so long as your grading is fair, that's good. But generally, I find that I like the community aspect that Natalie and Ann were talking about, because generally in my media ethics class and in the environmental class, I feel like we're all kind of going in the same direction, or like we're a little community, a little family who all cares about each other. We're not out to embarrass anybody. We're not trying to get in arguments, even if we disagreed about the level of change or how fast change should happen. Or, and I'm vegan and all my students know it, but I mean, they're not all going to go vegan or whatever, but it's like, but they can understand maybe where I'm coming from, or that the food system is messed up, right? And so we're all kind of moving in the same direction at least, and being supportive of each other, and that feels really good. Like, that's how I feel. And then the students at the end of the year are just like, they feel like, wow, this was a space that I could talk about these things, even if their family doesn't talk about the environment or something. In this class, they can talk about their concerns openly and be really caring. Like, that ethic of care is built into the class, that we care about each other's mental health, and this is hard, and we have so many things that are depressing in the world. So I would also say that mental health component, especially with the climate situation and racial justice issues, it's very upsetting, what we're dealing with. So I do think that solutions component of public interest communication is important, because it's channeling our outrage and our suffering and our disappointments about society into something that we think is productive, and so that's a little saving grace there in terms of the depressing stuff that we talk about.
I think that's such a good point.
You raise a good point. It's about your positionality in the classroom. And for a lot of us, when we were taught, well, maybe this is me, when I was taught to be an instructor, I was supposed to completely remove myself. So Natalie Tyndall, the person that I am, is left outside the door, and I come in and I'm just the distributor of knowledge, and I am all wise, all knowing up in front of the classroom, but I think there is something to say about being able to tell your students, I come in with these things. I'm not a vegan, Carrie's a vegan, so I am a person who is concerned about the rights of people of color in higher education. I think going into some spaces and being able to say that or declare that or maybe if you don't feel comfortable stating it, but there's other things that you can do. You can wear a t-shirt, you can wear a pin. There are other things that you can do to say, I am who I am and I'm coming into this space. I think that's incredibly important. Let's talk about teaching evaluations really quickly. So for a lot of people, they're hesitant to change what they're doing in their classrooms because they're terrified of your teaching evaluations. You're terrified of them tanking. You're terrified of your students and what they're going to say. What you do is you give the students multiple times within the class to vent their feelings. You let them share their feelings multiple time periods, share their wins, share their losses. And then at the end of the semester, with any negative evaluations you have, you put it in context and use it and you frame it as a positive thing. This is what I've learned from this class. This is some feedback. This is how I'll change this in the future. So don't let peer evaluations, don't let student evaluations scare you from doing this type of work, because it can all be contextualized and put into a narrative and framed. That's coming from an administrator, just FYI.
I also, I really love that, and I appreciate you saying it too as an administrator, because that's really important. And one of the things I want to do with my students is create a space around lived experience as well, and recognize that many of the people who are working on causes in public interest communications have lived experience, and in fact, the work that we do lived experience has to be at the middle of that. And so and it's also true, we're at University of Florida. We have students in our classroom who were at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas that day. We have students who are dealing with profound incidences of violence every day and have lived experience of that. And recognizing that, acknowledging that, making space for that to be or not, to talk about it or not, I think is a really important thing to do in the classroom. And one of the things that I try to do, I wish I did it more, I'm bad about remembering to do it, but I try to do it a few times a semester, is just ask them at the end of class, just here's some paper, write down something you want me to know. Mm-hmm. You can sign it or not. If you want to talk to me and more about it, say that. But just like having those continual outlets for really transparent feedback and acknowledging along the way too, I think this is really important in public interest communications. People have been doing this for centuries. But teaching it, this is new. Anybody who's doing this is making it up. None of us have models. We are doing the very best we know how to do without anybody ahead of us to take what they've done and bring it into our classrooms. And being transparent about that and saying and even saying in the when I tell my students, I'm making this up, I am doing the best I can. Your job on the evaluation is to help me make it better and to be candid about that.
Don't say you're making it up.
Well, that's a good point. I probably should stop saying that.
Yeah, don't say that.
Yeah.
Her evaluations are
noted,
lovely, by the way.
One last thing, can I just mention this? I think also too, in terms of talking about creating community, how you set up your syllabus and what you put into your syllabus creates that community as well. So if your students know that you are a person they can reach out to if they're going through food insecurity, if you're a person they can reach out to when they're going through housing insecurity, if you are a person who addresses and admits to everybody's going through mental health stuff, here are resources, here are people that you can talk to. That type of language in your syllabus says a lot.
Yes.
And I think those are things that you can easily do, and those are expectations you can sit up in the front of your class and say, I care. And I know this is a tough time for everybody. Here are resources. If you ever need anything, no judgment, come see me and we'll figure something out. That goes a long way.
Yeah.
in setting a tone for a classroom, regardless of any classroom, but especially if we're talking about public interest communication, you cannot be a jackass to your students.
I mean, so we keep on, I think, sort of dancing around a thing that I just want to like nail, which is the additional sort of mental load that is often in these classes, like for us as instructors of these classes, but the students of these classes as well, right? And so how do we deal with that? How can we better support, or what are things that we should be thinking about in our classes to help our students, to help ourselves in these situations?
Thank you for saying that out loud.
It's a very important question. Isaac is somewhere around here. They brought in mindfulness into their classes. So they would actually have their students do like a 5-minute breathing exercise to get them grounded and get them centered, and was doing other sorts of things like that in their classes. That's a tremendous thing to show to students, that you want to have them engaged, you want them to be fully present, but also too, you want them to have a clear mind coming in. I think that is something that it does take a toll to do this type of work. And I don't have the answers for it. I wish I knew, but I think that there are small strategies and there are large strategies. There are systemic things within the institution of the academy that we have to address to get rid of this. But I think at a smaller level, at an individual level, at a community level, these are questions that we should be asking and thinking of outcomes, expectations, things that we could be doing. So I know at least within a classroom space, giving your students space, giving your students grace. I also think too, this is me, I believe in ungrading and criteria grading. I think taking the pressure off for students about grades, so they're not worried about that. You don't have to deal with grade grubbing, that I'm here arguing with you about 1 point. Instead, let's talk about the work and the feedback and what you're getting from the class experience versus being regulated by numbers and points and percentages. That is incredibly terrifying for so many of our students who are A+ honor students, and they've been going through high school and they've been motivated by this all the time. You have to give them space to stop that. I think that's important too.
It goes back to modeling, right? We're teachers. We have to model what the ideal is, because we know that sometimes kids don't get that at home.
Absolutely.
I know I didn't.
Yeah. I like that idea of just being kind to each other and showing that you care about them, Natalie. I also do that thing where I have all the resources for our food pantry and for all kinds of things at our campus, like on my website. So in the first day, I'm talking about all those resources. And at our school, we do like to, because so many of our students are struggling financially and working jobs, I think all of us as teachers were always taught to be flexible with them and like to not be so punitive all the time. And if they need extra time for an assignment, to just go with it. So that's that grace that you're talking about. They can come to you and tell you, look, I'm having a hard time because I'm trying to work too much and I can't do this assignment by Friday. Like, let them have an extra, just let them do it. Don't be so strict with them. Another thing I do is I always play music in the beginning of class.
I do too.
And so you can use all kinds of, multicultural music from around the world to make people feel included, but also could be kind of rights-oriented music like I hear them playing at this conference. Or just even sometimes I'll do nature sounds and I'll put like a pretty, like those 4D ultra pictures of, Hawaii or something up on there, just kind of relaxing and just to set the tone, also thinking about nature, but just very positive. I also think the language in our syllabus can be put in the affirmative, like talk about the rewards for being on time or attending and participating, rather than framing as if you keep coming late, you could just frame it as, for those people who come on time, like just setting the expectation in the positive as much as we can. Because if you look at your syllabus, sometimes you look at it and it's a bunch of like, don't do this and you're gonna get an F if you do this. Like, a bunch of rules. And so can you reframe them a bit to be more affirmational?
Also, food. I encourage my students, like, bring your food to class. And if you have extra leftovers, bring your leftovers to class. And I bring food to class. And like, that's, not a, yep. Because like when we spend time eating together, there's community in that, and we start to share things, and we do potlucks, which is, you know, great. And if a student can't participate in the potluck for whatever reason, it's like, it's okay. We have enough for everyone. And then there's also this thing that I do, where I adopt like this super nerdy mom mentality, where I'm like, you weren't here. Are you okay? I missed you. The class wasn't the same because you weren't here. Just like adopting that, like this table that we gather around is sacred and nothing bad can happen to you here. Like just this super nerdy stuff. The other thing that we do is an exercise where I bring a soapbox to class, and students stand on the soapbox, and nobody's required to do it. Nobody gets graded on it, but they stand on the soapbox and they tell a story about why an issue is important to them and something that happened to them. And they may tell a story, a student told a story about a chicken that she loved. And because she loved that chicken so much, she's vegan. And the stories that come out of those aren't mine to share, but they are profound and meaningful. And after the students share those stories, they look at each other differently.
Mm-hmm. Your whole thing about being the nerdy mom. In the education literature, there's this thing called the warm demander, where you are giving and you are caring, but you also have expectations for them. Like, I'm concerned that you are here. I want you to do well. I want you to be successful. So you're pushing and pulling at the same time. So I say I'm a warm demander, but nerdy mom works too.
The students really appreciate it when you reach out and you say, like, I noticed you weren't here. Are you okay?
Mm-hmm.
And like, here's what we did in class. And are you going to be here on, you know, instead of just letting them continue to be absent or something. I had one student I don't know, he missed like months of class. I thought, anyway, and then at the end he came back and we worked with him to pass the class. So I don't know he wouldn't tell me what his issue was, right? He had some major issue, but anyway, like I just kept encouraging him, and then he finally came to class. So, you know, and then I tried not to make a big deal of it, you know, or like, you know, make him feel bad about it, because I figured he was having a mental health crisis of some kind. So, yeah, I think they definitely appreciate showing you that you care and you notice.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, can I just add one more thing? Because I want to give a shout out to Angela as well, and the importance of finding your people in the building, and because what you're doing is hard. Students tell stories and share experiences, and this is the experience of all educators. I don't think it may be more significant for public interest communications, but like being able to go to Angela and say like, oh my gosh, I just didn't feel like I was resonating today. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And like having her just say like, it's okay, you're not bad at this. Like having those people, being able to go to Matt and say, oh my gosh, like I don't know how to do this. I can't find the right example. Just finding your people around the building is like, man, it really matters.
All right, I promised nuts and bolts. So this is where I want to get nuts and bolts, right? Like, please tell us your very favorite assignment. Like, what is the assignment? What is the reading? What is the guest speaker? All of the above. Like, give these people, like, ideas for what can they do in their classroom that is your, like, very favorite things.
Okay, I'll go. This was for a social ads class, and it's been a hot second since I taught that, so let me rack my brain. But I put the assignment not focused on like sales, but how do we talk to different personality types? So we started by actually having students take a personality quiz, and it gave them a name of like nurturer, gosh, this was a long time ago. There's 4 others, all like analytical, nurture, you know, the types. And so being able to take that and say, okay, now that we have our audience, which is 5 different types of personalities. Some that are like super quick to make decisions and super gung-ho, and some that are like, I don't want to do this, they're really hesitant. So how do we cater the same message to all of these different people? So if we look at it on a social ads standpoint, it's like, okay, now we need 5 ads to target all of our different people. But if we look at it through a PIC point, it's, okay, how do we reach the most amount of people? How do we create this awareness, but also refine within those individual campaigns? So I think it was a way to take a very digital strategy class, and yes, push, like, yes, we can use this for advertising, but we don't have to. We can use psychology, we can draw on the research, and even silly quizzes like Myers-Briggs, not silly, but, and all of these things that society like grasps onto, how do we bring it into the classroom and actually make an assignment out of it? And so that was my favorite assignment. The students also loved it. It was their midterm, and they said that they just enjoyed having something different.
I'm doing something new in my class this semester, so I'm creating some things so you can follow along with me this semester if you want to, well, in the fall if you want to. But we are working on doing issues through an organization. So for example, the school lunch fairy is going to be one of our clients for this semester, because we're talking about school lunch debt and what does that mean and what does that look like in certain communities and how do we talk about that. So I'm literally building as I'm doing, so you can watch along on my website, and I'll probably be tweeting about it. But I think one of the cool things I'm thinking about this semester is what are the things that are common ground issues, and I hate the term common ground, but what are the things that we can, regardless of what side of the aisle you're on, whatever your political beliefs are, what are the things that we can all say that this is something that needs to change within society? This is a problem, a wicked problem, but we can address it through this one thing. So period poverty is one, school lunch debt is another, and then also victim awareness and victim advocacy, especially for those who are going through like crises that involve the police. So here are these major big issues. Here's an organization in Austin or nationally that's working on this. How do we advocate for them? What are the things they need to advocate for? How do we build an advocacy campaign for them? So that is what I'm trying to build out this semester. So again, I'm working on this now, so we'll see how it goes.
Nice.
Yeah, trying something. Thank you.
So one of the examples that, or one of the assignments that we've started doing in my classroom that I really, really like because I get to learn a lot from it too, is, and I have, we use a framework called the 6 spheres of influence to help students think about the spaces in which they can drive change. So there are policy, media, communities of influence, the market or industry, activism, and social. Oop, sorry. Oh, no, now I'm going to have to click through them all again. Thank you, Matt. So as we go through each of these spheres and we talk about each of these spheres through which you might drive change, I ask the students to go out and find examples of an effort that drove change through one of these spheres and to think about how action in one sphere may have resulted in change in another sphere and how they begin to interact. And I really love this assignment because it helps me get fresh examples for the classroom, because let's acknowledge that's a really hard thing, but also like they're in very different worlds than I am. They have very different lived experience, so it helps to contextualize what they're learning to what is meaningful for them as well. And so it's also a great way to help them really recognize that here's 6 circles on a screen, that this actually has meaning in the space of social change and they can breathe life into it.
This just raises the question, and Carrie might have some ideas too, but there may need to be some type of great ideas for teaching type of work that we do for PIC, so that could be something where people can come and see, like, this is something that I can use and adapt in my own classroom, because there aren't great, like Ann said, we're making it up as we go along, so this would be great to have a bank of resources for people as well. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, Carrie, if you had an example. Sorry.
Oh, well, Angela, or the team is putting together, there's a PIC teaching wiki that they put together. And so I sent in some of my syllabi, and I just sent Angela this week 6 assignments that she could post there. So that, I think that can serve as the bank that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And one of the assignments that I sent in that I really like, it's from my communicating environmental issues class, but it's at the end creating a moral vision statement in about 400 to 700 words. And the idea behind this, first of all, well, it ends the class on a positive note, like let's envision the future we want to see. Although I suppose you could also start the class with this. But the idea, though, from a communication standpoint, is that if you haven't really thought in the affirmative about how you see your ideal world working in terms, and for me, it's like the way we would relate to other animals in the environment, like fairly, what would that look like? Like for me, if animal rights came true, what would that look like? How would we eat? Like, trying to answer some of those tricky questions, because it's easier to talk about what you don't like right now and just dealing with all the anti this and anti that. But it's more inspiring and maybe even a little harder to say, like, okay, well, what replaces that and what would this world look like? And the idea is that if you know where you really want to go, when you're talking now and building your campaigns, you can use language that kind of foregrounds that vision or helps answer some of those questions. And so and it's also just really positive. So, and I write my own moral vision statement, and I do share it with the class, but I say that's optional if they want to read mine or not, because I don't want to totally shape theirs. And for some people, they choose to focus a lot on plastics, or they end up talking more about, I don't know, their own community or their own family. Like they take it in different directions, but it's really supposed to be a bigger goal. And I'm thinking now, I don't do it in my media ethics class, but we could do it there as even just like, what would an ideal media system look like? Would it be like 75% publicly funded or non-commercial media or something like that? And who would run the media, and how would it be multicultural? And it's nice to have that aspirational component because it gives you something to look forward to. I love that. And it often changes the language that you use. Like for me, I like to remind us that we're part of the animal kingdom. We're not above it or separate or some special species that the whole world exists for us. So the language I use has to kind of center us as an earthling, as an animal who shares the planet. So that's how it also relates back to communication in the campaign language I would use now. Fits the aspiration that I have for this moral vision.
Wow. Is that one of the assignments that you put on the wiki?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, check the wiki. So the last question that I want to pose for us before we let the room join us is, right, so our theme for this conference is activism more, right? And we've talked about it a little bit, but really, how do you see your role as an activist or the role of activism in your classes, particularly if you're trying to bring PIC into it?
I think that it is one of the things that, I was thinking about the barriers, of going back to the barriers. And one of the barriers that I think happens in the classroom is the fact that a lot of the stories that our students have learned about how change happens are flat out wrong. And they are built around perceptions of people flowing into the streets and raising their fists and demanding change and getting it. And which denies the deep level of organization and strategy and systems thinking that have gone into every change that has ever happened. And so I think about activism as in those 6 spheres as an essential element, but if we see it as the only element, we don't get to pull on the other levers, and we may actually be making our work a lot harder. So helping them to recognize the specific role that activism has, and really thinking through what the theory of change is and how it connects to those other areas.
I think we also have a responsibility as educators to, we produce a lot of content, right? And we teach our students to produce a lot of content, but we also have to teach them when to hold off on that content and when to say, you know what, as storytellers or as a practitioner, whatever label, I'm not the right person to tell this story, or I haven't done the job to empower the people that can tell this story. And so when we are going and talking and working with students, I try to take this approach of how can we change this perception that you have of what it means to be a practitioner, because it's not all glory. It's hard work, and it can be tiresome, and it can be exhausting. And so as much as we are telling students to do, we also have to tell them to, whoa, slow down.
Yes.
Take a second for you, and also for the world around us, because sometimes we don't have to get so fired up over something when it's not our battle to fight. And know when we can support the ones on the front line.
Well said. I love that.
What was the question again?
Good question.
What is the role of activism?
I would say that I take a tempered radical approach to this, especially because on the administration side, trying to build these things into a classroom, trying to build these things into a curriculum, or trying to even get faculty to do these things, you have to build support for your vision. You have to build support for those faculty members to do this type of work. So I think it requires that you be an activist internally, inside of the organization, talking to key people, making sure these things align, finding ways that you articulate the vision that's clear with the university strategic vision. How do these things interact? So I personally think that there is a place for activism inside the classroom, but also outside. And when we're talking about this and doing this type of work and taking that approach of building collaborations, building people who are going to champion this and be that voice for you inside the rooms where they're talking about why they're doing this and poo-pooing why we're doing this. So I think that's incredibly important. So making sure that we have allies, activists, people who can champion this, but also too, we're building in the appropriate structures so people don't feel like they're alone, that they're the only voice in the room, that they don't have anybody in the building. I think that that is just as important as the work that we're doing inside the classroom as well, and making sure the students feel supported in this work too. So I think that outside the classroom door is just as important.
I would say, and also thinking about the guest speakers that we have, and so like I bring in a professor of art who's an activist with plastics. She finds plastics on the beach and then turns it into art. So, and then I like to bring in some of my animal rights activist friends. And sometimes people have jobs and they get paid to do this professionally. Other times they have a job somewhere else, and this is just their grassroots thing they're doing. So you can also kind of mix that up and show that people volunteer to do this, and some people get paid to do this. You can have filmmakers and documentarians come in, people that have like podcasts or do public affairs. Like we have an Atlanta radio station that I'm a part of, Radio Free Georgia. And it's just community radio, so you can bring and show how people are using radio for advocating. You could bring in like an environmental lobbyist or something like that. And then I do, especially in the campaigns class and in my environmental communication class, I let them know that I am a grassroots activist. Like I don't get paid to do that, but I'll show picture sometimes as part of the lesson. There'll be a picture of me when I was in school, like with the Students for the Ethical Treatment of Animals group. Here is a little table that I set up for Mother's Day and the dairy campaign I had. So it's kind of chintzy and kind of funny looking, you know, but it's also puts myself, like when I was a student, I was doing this. And I think it's good for them to see now that I'm in my 50s that there's a lifelong, I've been doing this for a long time. I even found when I was cleaning out my parents, helping clean out my parents' basement, like before we could do desktop publishing, I wrote out a flyer about like not experimenting on animals, like cruelty-free cosmetics, and it's all drawn out and everything, and I shared that with the class too. You know, like, oh, this is from like the early 90s or the late 80s or something. Yeah, late 80s. It looks kind of funny and simple, but that kind of stuff also fits with a lot of the class assignments we might give them, where they have to do some kind of community outreach that's on campus about a topic of their choice. And they don't have much money, and they have to, you know, be creative and just use the resources of the university. And so I think modeling some of that grassroots activism, or like I participate as the faculty advisor for our animal rights group, the Peace Club, and so they'll see that I'm wearing my shirt from the club because I went to the Earth Day festival and I was at the table. So I guess they, you know, maybe can see that I'm doing some of these things that I'm expecting them to do, and they could have a whole lifetime, and there's many generations of people before us and to come who are working on these things. It's not just their generation that's inheriting all these problems. That's another lesson, I think.
That's good. All right. Open it to the room. No, I shot for 10 minutes of Q&A and we ended up with 5.
Oh.
Hello. Okay, hi. Thank you, Dr. Tyndall, for the shout out earlier. I'm Vivian.
Hey, Vivian.
I wanted to ask y'all, would it be useful to have more case studies around topics such as social good and responsibility, activism in the classroom, and how can practitioners already doing that work provide that to professors?
That's a good question. Yes, we're always looking for more case studies. We're always looking for more things to add in. I think whatever's easiest for that group to do. If they are a well-funded group with a lot of people, they can easily write up something. If they're not, coming in and doing an interview or coming in and doing a talk just on this one particular campaign that they did would be amazing. Podcasts, episodes that they can share, blogs that they can share, any of that material that we could possibly bundle together would be great material. So I don't think you need to actually have like a case study written up formally like this. It could be, here's what we did, form a story around it, or your class can form a story around it, and then you can talk to the professional who did it and ask them and why they chose this and why they chose to do that. I think that's important. I think that would work.
But if you do want that formal case study, I know exactly where you can put it. Go to journal.pic.org.
And actually, too, there is a case studies journal that I happen to run now on accident. Case Studies and Strategic Communication also is looking for cases. So you have 2 places to place them.
Hey, great panel, and I love this point because of the curriculum kind of aspect of and the on-the-ground kind of teaching of it. It reminds me of all the advocacy and social change courses I have to teach. But one question I do have, given that this is public interest as well, is where do we start thinking about also kind of the decades of kind of union work and activism? The idea of, obviously there's organization behind union and labor activism that also has really great institutes that do
Training.
direct action, training, organizing. Really, if we're thinking at public interests, and oftentimes, given that students now, especially graduate students, are trying to organize for better health and better unions on university campuses, oftentimes unions on campuses and in classrooms, particularly in PR classes, are it's not just activism is a dirty word, it's almost like unions are a dirty word. So yeah. I'm just curious the type of public interest activism and social justice activism for the students that want to go further, because I don't think in all these classrooms you're going to get to the point of actually some of the people who are really doing. You talk about the front lines, like people on the front lines and on the ground, where it's a dangerous thing to interact with a university in a classroom.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes admin and our own positions, we aren't necessarily the people who are going to be able to further the cause. So I just want to hear the panels kind of, when it comes to curriculum, particularly seeing very passionate youth who probably will grow out of the stuff that we're even exposed to, and that might actually do benefit from like activism, like really organized activism outside. So
Yeah,
that's
it's
just
a
my
really
question.
good question. I'll jump in and say one of the things that I try to do as much as possible in the classroom is go back and find the why. Go back to those sort of iconic stories that they've heard and find the stories of the individuals. Like going back to, well, why is it that the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire was such a significant moment in the labor movement? And it wasn't because of simply because of the horror of the fire and the circumstances of that. It was all of the really deep organizing that had been happening in the Jewish immigrant community many years before that. And so that community is the group that got hundreds of people to turn out into the streets of New York City to watch the caskets roll by. And had that deep organizing not happened, that moment would not have had the profound effect that it did on workers' rights. But also bringing that to contemporary times to find the examples of where that's happening now and what the organizing that's happening at Walmart really looks like, and trying to bring those voices into the classroom as much as possible, and those stories into the classroom. But really going back and finding what the work looked like that led to the story.
I think we're also sitting in a unique place in time where we see one of the largest corporations, Starbucks, fighting unions, and chances are one of your students probably works there because it's a college campus.
Yeah.
So or went there before class. And so how can we bring those things, how can we bring, yes, current events, but frame them into PIC and analyze the movement and analyze, okay, where did this start? Because it didn't start 2 months ago on TikTok.
Yeah.
There's years before that. So I think it's our job to help folks, especially when there is something that comes up or is big, makes big headlines. How do we say, yes, this is really scary, or this isn't good, but it didn't start here. We have to put those, kind of lay out the map and show that history, like you were saying.
Summer.
Okay, thank y'all. This panel has been fantastic. I love it. But I want to go back to something that y'all said earlier, which was this idea that PIC is a skill set. So when we're thinking about teaching this in our classes, what exactly is that PIC skill set that we're supposed to be teaching, and how is it different than the skill sets we're already teaching for a journalism class or PR, or like I teach media for social justice, which I guess sort of fits within PIC, but what exactly is that skill set?
Well, I think there are a couple of things that you need to know to be skilled in public interest communications that may not necessarily be required in other forms of communication. One is systems thinking. Really being able to map systems, to understand who's making the choices or made the choices that led to those systems, what the values of those individuals are. So I think like the deep systems thinking skill set is really important. Also, I think another one is intense pragmatism. This is a conversation I want to have with Carrie over dinner, because when you start to get really pragmatic, some really big ethical questions start to emerge. But understanding how to concentrate resources where they can have the greatest effect. So I disagree with the idea that we have to reach a lot of people to make change. So I think another really important skill set that we need to normalize for all of our students, it may not be unique to public interest communications, but it needs to start here, is removing the normalization of violence from our language. Let's stop using the term impact when we mean effect. Thank you. Impact is a violent experience. Let's stop using the term target audiences. Nothing good happens to targets. Why are we using unnecessary violence in our words every day? Let's talk instead about actors so that we are focusing our attention on the people whose actions and choices can make a difference. So really that like very narrow systemic thinking about how change can happen. And the other one I would say is human-centered design, making sure that we're designing for the people we serve for and with, and really thinking about how they are going to interact with the problems and solutions that we set out. So I think those are some of the others. I actually have a slide with 12 things, but I can share that with you later.
Was translational communication a part of that, or learning how to translate from the research to the?
No, but it should have been.
13 things.
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah. Yeah, it's in the big one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we are officially over time.
Oh,
Sadly, 3 minutes, so sorry, Angela.
Do we have one more?
You can find us all. So come find us, ask us questions. All of the resources that we've talked about will be shared on the slide that Angela keeps showing, and also the wiki, right? Make friends with the wiki, especially for this sort of stuff. Please share to the wiki, those of you who are teaching in this space, and let's make a gift, right, in that space. So
awesome.
thank you all.
Thank you. Thanks, Carrie.
Thank you. Yeah, so cool.
Thank you.
Thank you. I like it up here. I don't want to leave.
Thank you. That was awesome.
I like this.
I love a good panel.
Okay, we have just a quick 5-minute turnaround, and then we will start our final full panel session, followed by a short wrap-up conversation about how we're going to move the work forward. So just hang out 5 minutes. We'll be back.